It started like any other late-night interview. The lights were bright, the music was upbeat, and the audience was cheering as Jimmy Kimmel leaned forward with that usual grin of his. Chris Hemsworth was sitting across from him, smiling politely, legs crossed, hands folded. He looked calm. At first. Then something shifted. No one expected it. 1 second, Jimmy was cracking a joke. Something about Hemsworth's role in the new movie. Something about how Thor wasn't as mighty without his hammer. The audience laughed just like they always do, but Chris didn't. He gave a tight smile, glanced off camera for a split second, and then looked back at Jimmy with a look that didn't match the smile at all. The room felt different now. Something was off. Jimmy didn't stop. He kept going, tossing in a line about Chris's brother Liam and a past relationship that had nothing to do with the movie. A cheap shot. Chris blinked. You could almost see the moment his patience ran out. Without saying a word, he leaned forward slowly, took off the mic clipped to his shirt and placed it on the table. Hard. It wasn't thrown, but it wasn't gentle either. The sound echoed, even over the shocked gasps from the audience. Jimmy froze. You could see it in his face. That split-second panic, trying to figure out if this was a bit or if something real had just happened. Chris stood up. He didn't yell. He didn't smile. He just stared Jimmy down for a second, shook his head and walked off stage. The audience didn't know what to do. A few people laughed nervously. Most just stayed quiet, eyes wide. A producer rushed toward the stage from the side, trying to speak to Chris as he walked past the curtain. Then everything cut to black. A sentence flashed on screen. Chris Hemsworth kicked off live TV, and before anyone could catch their breath, the screen lit up again. This time with quick flashes, Jimmy looking confused, backstage footage of producers shouting, tweets from fans already going viral, and a brief clip of Chris in a hallway saying, "I'm done with this." No intro music, no jokes, no warning. This wasn't just an awkward moment. It was the moment everything broke. This whole thing was never supposed to blow up. It was just another promo stop. Chris Hemsworth had been making the rounds, doing the usual press junkets for his new Marvel film. Fans were excited. The trailer had just dropped and the internet was buzzing about Thor's return. Naturally, he ended up on Jimmy Kimmel Live, which was known for being a fun, safe place for actors to joke around, play a game, maybe drop a teaser or two, and call it a night. When Chris walked out, the audience gave him a standing ovation. He smiled, waved, did that laid-back Aussie thing everyone loves him for. Jimmy greeted him with open arms. "The mighty Thor himself," he said with a laugh, pulling him in for a quick hug. Chris chuckled, sat down, adjusted his mic. It all seemed fine, normal. The first few minutes were exactly what you'd expect. Jimmy cracked a few jokes about Chris's muscles, about how unfair it was that someone could be that good-looking and still be funny. Chris smiled. He even played along. "It's a lot of work, mate," he said with a wink, flexing his arm just enough to get a cheer from the crowd. But then Jimmy shifted gears. He brought up a clip from the new movie, a short, dramatic scene where Thor loses control during a major battle. It was supposed to lead into a question about stunt work, or maybe how Chris trained for the role. Instead, Jimmy made a sarcastic comment about Thor finally having a meltdown, then followed it up with a jab. "Was that based on any of your real-life temper issues?" The crowd laughed, a little unsure. Chris chuckled too, but this time the smile didn't reach his eyes. He answered calmly, saying something about how acting is about channeling emotion. But Jimmy kept pushing. He joked about past interviews, moments when Chris had snapped at paparazzi, even brought up an old tabloid story involving his brother and a private family dispute. Chris stayed polite, but something had clearly changed. He wasn't as relaxed now. His arms were crossed, his smile was tighter. And every time Jimmy threw another sarcastic line his way, Chris answered with fewer words. It still looked like a regular interview from the outside. But if you were watching closely, you could tell something was building under the surface. And it wouldn't take much to set it off. If you're into real Hollywood drama and viral backstage moments, hit that subscribe button. We've got more than just gossip. We've got receipts. It happened fast. 1 minute it was just late-night fun, the usual mix of teasing and celebrity banter. But then Jimmy said something that didn't land right. He turned to Chris and, with that half-smile he's known for, dropped a comment about Liam Hemsworth. At first it sounded harmless. Something like, "At least you're not the Hemsworth brother who lost Miley Cyrus." The audience let out a mix of laughter and gasps. Some people probably thought he was just pushing the line like he always does. But that one hit different. Chris's reaction was instant. His smile dropped. He looked down for a second, jaw clenched just slightly, then looked back up at Jimmy with a blank expression. He didn't laugh. He didn't even fake it. And before the moment had a chance to cool off, Jimmy went on. He pointed at a picture from the movie set, a behind-the-scenes shot of Chris without his usual bulk, taken during a scene where Thor is shown in a more vulnerable post-battle state. "So what happened here?" Jimmy said, grinning. "Thor skipped leg day, or was it like a diet gone wrong?" It was a body-shaming joke, not direct, but just enough to sting. Chris was clearly over it. He leaned forward and said calmly but sharp, "Did you just bring up my brother's breakup and my weight in the same 5 minutes, or is this part of some comedy bit I missed?" The crowd went quiet. No laughs this time. No one was sure if he was joking. But Chris wasn't blinking. He wasn't smiling. He just stared at Jimmy. Jimmy tried to laugh it off, made a nervous joke about how it's all love here. But it was clear that something had changed in the room. The light tone was gone. Chris sat back, arms folded, face stiff. The tension was thick. Even the band didn't play the usual background riff. It wasn't about just one joke. It was the build-up, the teasing, the sarcasm, the personal digs. Chris had taken it for most of the interview, letting it slide. But that last combo, dragging his brother into it and making fun of his body, crossed a line. And for the first time that night, it wasn't a show anymore. It was real. If you're into the real side of celebrity life, the moments they don't want you to see, hit that subscribe button. We bring the truth, not the PR version. The air in the studio was already tense, but instead of dialing it back, Jimmy made a mistake. He tried to keep control of the room, and in doing that, he pushed things even further. After Chris clapped back with that cold line about Jimmy dragging his brother and his body into the same joke, there was this long pause, but instead of letting the moment breathe or even apologizing, Jimmy doubled down. He laughed nervously and said, "Come on, Chris, you're an actor. You've got to be able to take a joke." Then, without missing a beat, he launched into another story, one that involved Chris getting too big for Marvel's green screens. Chris tried to respond, to explain why that comment crossed a line, but Jimmy kept talking, louder, faster. He was trying to keep the show moving, trying to smooth it all over with energy. But it just made it worse. Chris leaned forward again and said, "Are you going to let me talk, or is this one of those shows where the guest's only job is to sit here and get roasted?" The crowd didn't laugh. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. You could feel how awkward it had gotten. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a real argument playing out live, and nobody knew what to do. Jimmy, trying to stay on top, forced a laugh and replied, "It's just jokes, man. You, of all people, should know how Hollywood works." Chris didn't hold back now. "Yeah, I do," he shot back. "And I also know when someone's hiding behind jokes to say stuff they don't have the guts to say face to face." That hit hard. The audience froze. You could hear someone cough. Even the band wasn't playing anymore. Backstage, you could see it in the crew's faces, in a full panic mode. One producer was signaling wildly to the camera operator. Another was talking into a headset, pacing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. And then, just like that, the camera cut. The screen faded to a sudden commercial break. Right in the middle of the exchange. No outro. No joke to close the segment. Just a hard cut to a random car ad. People watching live were stunned. Social media blew up instantly. Clips were already being posted before the commercial ended. People were asking was it staged? Was it real? Did Chris Hemsworth just walk off Jimmy Kimmel? Back in the studio, the audience sat in silence. The mood had completely changed. The rest of the show never aired. Whatever was coming next got canceled. Whatever had just happened. It wasn't planned. And it definitely wasn't fake. Right, after the screen cut to commercial, chaos took over behind the scenes. According to a few people who were there, the tension didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. It actually got worse. Chris didn't just stay silent backstage. He was still upset, still fired up. One staff member said Chris pulled off his mic and tossed it onto a chair, then looked straight at one of the producers and said, "This wasn't what I agreed to." There was yelling, not wild screaming, but sharp, angry back and forth between Chris and a couple of crew members. He wasn't willing to play along anymore. Apparently, Chris told them he felt ambushed, like he walked into what was supposed to be a fun promo for the new Marvel movie, but instead got cornered by jokes that weren't really jokes. He didn't like how his family was dragged into it, and especially didn't appreciate the comments about his body. It wasn't just about him anymore. He felt like it crossed a line. Producers tried to calm things down. One of them kept telling Chris they could fix it in post, meaning they'd edit the scene to make it smoother later. But Chris wasn't interested. He told them straight up, "I'm not going back out there." That was it. He made up his mind. Meanwhile, in the studio, the audience had no idea what was going on. People were whispering to each other, looking around, waiting for someone to explain. After a few minutes, one of the crew members stepped out and told the crowd there were technical difficulties. That was all they said. No mention of Chris. No mention of the fight. Just a vague excuse. But the crowd wasn't stupid. They knew something had gone wrong. Some had already started texting friends about what they'd seen. A few even posted short clips online. Shaky phone footage, blurry and full of whispers. But it was enough to hint that something big had just gone down. Backstage, Jimmy reportedly stayed in his dressing room for a while. Some say he didn't speak to Chris again that night. Others say a few words were exchanged, but not the kind you'd want to air. Either way, by the end of the night, Chris had already left the building. No goodbye. No second take. And the show? It never addressed the moment officially. The episode went online later, but the clip with Chris was missing, like it never happened. But people who saw it live knew the truth, and they were already spreading it everywhere. As word of the clash spread like wildfire online, Jimmy Kimmel's team moved fast. Just a few hours after the taping ended, his publicist sent out a short, carefully worded statement. It didn't say much, just enough to make it sound like the whole thing was no big deal. The exact words? "Sometimes things don't go as planned during live tapings. We're grateful to our guests and our audience for rolling with it." That was it. No mention of Chris, no apology. Just a brush off. Behind the scenes, though, things weren't so calm. ABC executives were already asking questions. According to two different people who worked there, Kimmel's been warned before about pushing too far with certain jokes, especially when it gets personal. One insider even said this wasn't the first time a guest walked off set feeling uncomfortable. It's just that this time it blew up on camera. Meanwhile, online, people were already picking sides. Clips were going viral. Not the polished official stuff, but grainy footage recorded by audience members who were quick on their phones. The moment where Chris's smile fades, shared everywhere. People started debating what really happened. Was Chris too sensitive? Was Jimmy out of line? It didn't matter what side you were on, the fire was spreading. In response, Jimmy's social media team went into full lockdown mode. Comments under the show's YouTube videos were suddenly turned off. That never happens unless something's seriously wrong. The video from that night's episode? Posted late with all mentions of Chris cut out. If you hadn't seen it live, you'd have no clue he was ever there, and that's when things got weirder. Some fans noticed that even on Instagram, posts about the show were unusually quiet. No clips, no behind-the-scenes photos, nothing. People started asking questions in DMs and story replies. Most of them never got answers. Internally, there was talk about whether Jimmy might address it in a later episode. Some producers were in favor of just moving on, pretending like nothing happened. Others said it would look worse to ignore it. But as of now, he hasn't said a word. Not on air. Not online, nothing. It's clear his team is trying to control the story. They want to keep things clean, make it blow over fast. But when it happens live, and when the internet gets involved, it's not so easy to bury. Subscribe if you think late-night shows aren't just entertainment. They're battlefields. Stay tuned. A day after the blow-up on Jimmy Kimmel's show, Chris Hemsworth finally broke his silence. No press release, no manager statement, just a short video straight from his trailer on the set of his new film. You could tell it wasn't planned. He looked tired, not angry, just done. He started with a quiet pause before saying, "Look, I get it. Late-night shows are about laughs. I've laughed at myself plenty of times. I don't mind being the butt of the joke when the joke's actually a joke, but there's a line, and last night it got crossed." He didn't name Jimmy directly, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew what he was talking about. He talked about how it felt to be on that stage when the jokes went from funny to personal, and from personal to something that just felt mean. "It's not about being soft," he said. "It's about respect. When your family gets brought into it, when your body's being mocked in front of millions, it stops being comedy. It turns into something else." Then he added a sentence that hit hard. "I'm not just a punchline. None of us are." People online immediately lit up. The video spread across TikTok and Twitter within minutes. Fans started reposting it with captions like "Chris deserves better" and "That wasn't comedy, boy, that was bullying." Even people who didn't usually follow celebrity drama were weighing in, calling out the way late-night hosts sometimes hide behind jokes when they're just being mean. Some users dug up old clips of other actors on Jimmy's show, moments where he crossed a line, interrupted guests, or made comments that aged badly. It wasn't just about Chris anymore. It turned into a bigger conversation about what kind of humor we accept and what's actually funny. On TikTok, fans began using a clip of Chris saying, "I'm not just a punchline," in edits with music behind it. Some even made side-by-side comparisons of Chris laughing in earlier interviews versus how serious he looked the night of the clash. It was raw and emotional, and it clearly hit a nerve. Hashtags like "Do I respect Chris" and "marred late-night boundaries" started trending. Other celebrities didn't say much, but a few liked his post, including actors from the Marvel franchise and even one of the writers from Thor, Ragnarok. By the end of the day, Chris's video had millions of views. And while Jimmy's camp stayed quiet, it was clear that Chris had already won over the public. Not because he yelled or made a scene, but because he spoke like a real person who'd had enough. The internet didn't waste a second. As soon as Chris Hemsworth's video went live, social media turned into a battlefield. On Twitter, 2 hashtags took off fast: Kimmel canceled and Hearts Chris overreacting. It was like watching a live fight, not between 2 celebrities, but between millions of users choosing their side. One half of the internet backed Chris hard. People were posting screen recordings of the interview, zooming in on the moment his smile dropped. Some fans even uploaded side-by-side videos comparing his past appearances on Jimmy's show, showing how different his body language was this time. A lot of people were saying the same thing. You could see the moment he shut down. They weren't just reacting emotionally, they were breaking it down like a courtroom case. On TikTok, it got even more intense. Creators were stitching the interview with their own commentary. Some were former comedians and actors talking about how jokes can cross into disrespect real quick. Others were just regular fans sharing why the moment felt different, more real. One clip that went viral showed Chris looking uncomfortable while Jimmy talked over him, with the caption, "This isn't banter, it's humiliation." Reddit. Users took things to another level. A thread on R Television titled, "Did Kimmel cross the line with Hemsworth?" was packed with slow-motion clips, timestamps, and even body language analysis. Someone posted, "Look at how Chris adjusts his posture at 5:43, classic discomfort signal." Another user added, "When he folds his arms, he's closing off. That's not acting, that's real." But it wasn't all one-sided. Team Jimmy also showed up. Some fans argued that Kimmel's always been edgy, and Chris should have expected that. "It's part of the show," one user posted. "You don't go on Jimmy Kimmel Live and expect to get softballs." Memes started popping up too. One of the most shared was a split screen of Thor yelling in a battle scene next to a screenshot of Chris looking angry on Kimmel, with the caption, "Same energy." Still, even people defending Jimmy admitted, this one felt a little off. A few longtime fans said they'd never seen him lose a guest like that before. "He usually reads the room better," someone commented. This time he misread it, badly. By the end of the day, the internet wasn't just reacting, it was picking sides. And while no official poll was taken, it was clear that Chris had more people in his corner. Not just because he's famous, but because he looked human. Hurt, but not fake. Calm, but not cold. If you live for real-time celebrity drama and want to see the unfiltered moments Hollywood tries to hide, hit that subscribe button. We're not just telling stories, we're showing the receipts. Right after the drama blew up online, some big names from Hollywood started jumping into the conversation, making it clear they had opinions about what went down between Chris Hemsworth and Jimmy Kimmel. Scarlett Johansson, who's worked closely with Chris in the Marvel movies, quietly showed her support by liking his video post. That small gesture sent a strong message. She was clearly standing with Chris without saying a word. Then Mark Ruffalo stepped in with a comment that caught everyone's attention. He wrote, "About time someone said it," pointing at the way Chris called out what he felt was disrespect disguised as humor. Mark's words gave the whole situation a new weight because he's known for speaking up about fairness in Hollywood, and his fans took it as a sign that Chris's reaction was not just justified, but necessary. Meanwhile, things started shifting backstage in late-night TV circles. Reports came in that some of Jimmy Kimmel's usual celebrity guests were backing out of upcoming appearances. Nobody officially announced cancellations, but insiders said the atmosphere was tense. The message was clear. Many stars didn't want to get caught in the middle of a conflict where one side looked like it was being unfairly treated. This wasn't just another late-night squabble anymore. It had become a story that Hollywood itself was watching closely and judging. The way these celebrities took sides showed just how serious things had gotten, and how one fiery clash on live TV could ripple across the entire industry. After the fallout, it quickly became clear that things wouldn't just go back to normal. Chris Hemsworth dropped hints that he might skip the usual press tour for his new Marvel movie. Fans noticed how he stayed quiet in interviews and seemed less interested in promoting the film, which was unusual for someone who's usually all in. This move made people wonder if Chris was trying to avoid more public clashes or just needed some time to recover from the mess. Meanwhile, rumors started swirling that Jimmy Kimmel's contract with ABC was being reviewed behind closed doors. Insiders said the network was worried about the damage to their reputation and was considering whether to keep pushing forward with Jimmy as the face of the show. While nothing official was announced, the tension around his future grew day by day. Fans on both sides didn't stay silent either. Petitions asking for a public apology from Jimmy gained thousands of signatures fast, with many viewers feeling he had crossed a line and disrespected Chris on national TV. The online pressure added fuel to the story, showing just how much people cared about fairness and respect, not just laughs. In the end, this was never just about a joke gone wrong. It was about respect, about knowing where to draw the line, and about who holds the power when things go off script. This clash on live television revealed how quickly things can spiral when humor turns personal, and it left everyone wondering what the real cost will be for both Chris Hemsworth and Jimmy Kimmel going forward.